It's alive!
Monsters. We fear them, we fight them, and sometimes we are them. Sci-fi has always had a thing for monsters. Not just the big, scary ones with claws and fangs, the xenomorph from Alien comes immediately to mind, but the ones hiding in plain sight, the darker side of human nature. The parts of ourselves we'd rather pretend don't exist. The most unsettling monsters in sci-fi aren't always alien, invaders, or grotesque creatures. Sometimes they're just reflections of us. It's not only about what lurks in the shadows, it's about what we see when we really look at ourselves. The best sci-fi doesn't just speculate about the future, it forces us to confront who we are right now. Take Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. The horror here isn't the creature itself, it's Victor Frankenstein, the scientist who creates life then immediately abandons it. The creature turns violent only because it's mistreated. It's not a mindless beast, it's what happens when cruelty and neglect warp something innocent into something terrifying. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson has influenced countless stories in the genre. The idea of duality, the constant battle between civility and primal urges, has shaped sci-fi's obsession with human nature being unraveled by science and technology. This taps into Carl Jung's concept of the shadow self, the unconscious, repressed parts of us we don't want to acknowledge. In many sci-fi stories, facing that shadow is where the real horror begins. One of the best examples of this in sci-fi, Star Trek the original series, episode The Enemy Within. A transporter incident splits Captain Kirk into two versions of himself, one supposedly good and compassionate but indecisive, the other supposedly evil, aggressive and unrestrained. The episode makes it clear, without his darker instincts, the good Kirk can't make command decisions. Leadership isn't just about kindness, sometimes you need to be ruthless to survive. It's a direct nod to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, hammering home sci-fi's ongoing theme that our darker side isn't just something to fear, it might be something we actually need. One of the most unsettling ways sci-fi examines the darker side of humanity is by turning fear itself into the monster, or reflecting the darker aspects of ourselves back at us. Michael Crichton's Sphere is a prime example of this. In the story, a team of scientists discovers an ancient alien spacecraft resting deep in the ocean. Inside, they find a glowing sphere of an unknown origin. At first, they believe they are under attack from some external alien force. However, the terrifying events that unfold, manifestations of their worst nightmares, are not caused by an outside intelligence. The sphere itself grants those who enter it the unconscious ability to shape reality. This means that the monsters they're battling are actually projections of their own fears and anxieties. Sphere plays with the idea that human imagination, when left unchecked, is capable of producing horrors worse than anything extraterrestrial. So yeah, people have a dark side. I think we're all on the same page with that. But it's not as simple as that. What happens when society tries to, quote, fix that darkness? This happens in A Clockwork Orange. The horror of Alex Delage's violent rampages are disturbing and very real. But there's also the horror of what happens when society tries to fix him. Alex is the product of unchecked aggression and a world that has failed to instill any real morality in him. But when he's caught, he's subjected to conditioning in an attempt to make him physically incapable of violence. He doesn't reform, he doesn't learn, he's just stripped of agency, reduced to an automaton, castrated of independent will. The novel asks an unsettling question. Is it worse to be a person who chooses evil, or one who has no choice but to be good? The state's attempt to rehabilitate Alex turns out to be just as monstrous as his own actions, showing that morality without free will is no morality at all. A world without choice, no matter how orderly, is more terrifying than one filled with chaos. Another story that challenges our perceptions of the monster is Michael Faber's Under the Skin. At first, the novel and its film adaptation follows a familiar pattern. A predatory alien stalks and preys upon human men, luring them to their demise. We're led to view her as a cold, inhuman killer. However, by the end, Under the Skin flips its initial premise, forcing us to question whether the monster was ever the alien at all. I think sci-fi's power comes from its ability to make us uncomfortable about ourselves. It forces us to ask difficult questions about our own nature and our choices. Sometimes the scariest revelation in sci-fi isn't the monster, it's realizing we are the monster. Take District 9. At first the aliens seem like the monsters, ugly, insect-like creatures shoved into slums, feared and hated. But as the story unfolds, it becomes painfully clear. The real villains aren't the aliens, it's us. The idea that humans can be worse than the monsters they fear is central to the movie The Mist from Stephen King's novella. When a dense mist rolls into a small town, strange and terrifying creatures lurk within it, attacking anyone who ventures outside. However, while these monsters pose a physical threat, the true horror unfolds inside a local supermarket, where a group of survivors take shelter. As their fear escalates, they begin turning on each other. Religious fanaticism takes hold, and a dangerous mob mentality emerges, leading them to commit atrocities they never would have considered under normal circumstances. The Black Mirror series continues this theme, particularly with episodes like White Bear, where society punishes criminals in a perpetual loop of suffering, making us question whether justice has turned into cruelty. Black Mirror has another perfect example of this theme in Men Against Fire. In this episode, soldiers are implanted with a neural interface which distorts their perception and makes them see a certain group of people, referred to as roaches, as grotesque, inhuman creatures. This psychological manipulation makes it easier for them to kill without question. As the story unfolds, the horrifying truth is revealed. The roaches are just ordinary humans, labelled as subhuman to justify their extermination. The real monsters aren't the so-called roaches, but the system that dehumanises them. Even Star Trek played with this fear in The Devil in the Dark. At first, the Enterprise crew believes they're dealing with a murderous creature, but by the end they realise it's an intelligent being protecting its young. The real monsters? The humans who stormed in, weapons drawn, without stopping to understand first. Sci-fi has never been just about thrilling stories or futuristic speculation. It's always been a lens through which we can examine ourselves. By confronting monsters, whether external or internal, these stories force us to grapple with the fundamental questions about our identity, morality, and the consequences of our choices. In many ways, sci-fi is not about escaping reality, but about illuminating it, giving us the tools to reflect on our own nature and the world we're shaping. The best sci-fi doesn't just entertain, it challenges us to question who we really are. Thanks so much for watching. If you're craving an extraordinary journey through realms unexplored, consider delving into universes directly out of my brain by checking out my sci-fi novels Black Milk and Delphine Descends. You can find more details in the description. Thanks for your support.